Recognize there is no right way and there is no wrong way. There's just a way. So stop stressing about the right way. Just pick a direction and go for it. Sell more chicken. And by that, I mean the following, which is if you're a company that is winning the QSR battle by selling chicken, the answer to how to drive sales isn't all of a sudden to sell pizza. It is to sell more chicken, sell deviations of what makes you successful. You've got to be humble and recognize that somebody who's going to your restaurant for chicken probably isn't going to go to your restaurant for pizza.
Welcome back to Mic'd Up. I'm your host, Mike DiCioccio, and today we have an exciting guest who's all about shaking things up in the world of branding and marketing. And they are different. We're going to talk about how they're different. He has a colorful background that includes big names like Avon, Victoria's Secret Pink, and Pearl Vision. He's also known for his innovative approach and his knack for telling stories that really connect. His book, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone, is packed with insights on how to revitalize your brand. So let's dive right into his story and the lessons that he's learned along the way. Welcome to the show, branding expert Doug Zarkin.
Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Hey man, appreciate you being here. What a bio. It's just packed with so much, and there's a lot there that I had to kind of keep out so people didn't start falling asleep in the middle of me reading off everything. But I want everyone to know, if you're interested in Doug's story and you really love this podcast, check out the show notes. I have his website, his social media, all the resources linked right there for you. But Doug, what I want to do to start this is literally go back to the beginning. Share how you got started in the marketing world. What sparked your passion for this in the first place, and branding and team leadership? Like, how did that all begin?
Yeah. So I graduated undergrad on a Sunday morning, and Monday, 8:30 a.m., I started grad school, and I did my MBA in 13 months. And I knew coming out of grad school that I wanted to run a business and eventually run a brand, but I had no idea how to. And this was a land before LinkedIn, which hopefully doesn't make me old as dirt, but it just does qualify the fact that there used to not be a resource where you could find internships and figure out who's the right person. You had to hustle. And a good family friend gave me some advice. And they said, look, if you want to be in the front of the train, if you want to be driving the train, whether it's as CMO, CBO, or brand president, get on at the back, work your way to the front. The reason is because when you get to the front, you'll have done the roles and functions. You'll understand the roles and functions. But most importantly, you'll speak the language of those roles and functions so that you can motivate the people that are in them to deliver that amazing, intense passion that is so important in building a brand and building a business. So I started out in the agency world in media, spent about 10 years at Gray Advertising and Saatchi & working on real big name brands, and then eventually made the jump to the client side, where I was the first head of marketing creative services for a new business unit from Avon called the Mark brand. And proud to say that I am an Avon lady. I learned how to sell lip gloss, spent my first 6 weeks at the company out in the field. And that was so important. Out in
the field was literally door to door, right?
Door to door.
Yeah.
Door to door, learning the intricacies of the operations of the brand. And that's so incredibly important because marketing without ops is just words on paper. You have to be able to operationalize what your plans are. And then eventually launched the Mark brand, took it about 120 million, went over to Victoria's Secret to take this incubating business called Pink and really turn it into a cross-category powerhouse. Spent some time there, danced around.
Can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
I think there's a lot of really great stuff right there. And I know you're going through your story to try to bring us up to speed. But so you're doing Avon, and you're at that time going door to door selling makeup and products. And the Mark line, this might sound funny, but was that a line for men? Like, some men wear makeup like obviously in media, if you're on TV and stuff like that. So I'm totally misunderstanding what that means. So
the Mark brand, it was Mark by Avon, the makeup you can buy and sell. And it was really designed to bring in a younger, more affluent salesperson, representative into the mix and consumer into the mix. Avon was a brand that was really focusing on that 45 plus market. And the 18 to 34 market was so lucrative. And that's why they knew they needed to start an entire new business unit. And so, we recruited 50,000 young women to be representatives. We focused our efforts on the top 25 college campuses as populated by women, and really empowered young women to take this business opportunity and make it their own. And that's how we got scale very quickly. It was really important, as we were thinking differently about the Avon brand, to create a standalone business, but that still had the same essence of Avon's commitment to care and quality, which was so incredibly important. Never doubted. You may not have thought that Avon was for you as a woman in your 20s, but you knew they were a credible brand. And so we wanted to leverage that.
Yeah, everybody has heard of it at some point. I mean, when you're young, you hear about it with your mother or, anybody in your family. And then, but that's really interesting because so you were kind of tasked with having a company that's already this big name, but try to get into a new market, try to hit a new target audience. And then it sounds like a similar thing happened at Victoria's Secret, which everybody knows Victoria's Secret, but the pink line in particular is more like apparel, like pajamas, stuff like that, right? So how did you end up there in the first place? And then how do you end up really, tell me about like what your role was in creating pink, if it wasn't created yet. If it was already created, like how did you drive it forward?
So the way I got there was simple, which was I was recruited out, almost like the center fielder for the New York Yankees. It was a tremendous sort of sexy push from them to go there.
You're the Bernie Williams of Victoria's Secret.
I would like to think the Jeter, but Bernie did a good job.
Bernie was a hell of a
player. But it was they had the brand in test market, and they were trying to expand it beyond just sweatpants and core intimates. They wanted cross category, and coming from Avon, we had done that with beauty and accessories, and so it was natural fit for me to go and try to replicate that at Limited, which owned Victoria's Secret and owned Pink. And I think in going there, the push we needed to create a standalone brand. VS, the master brand at the time. And again, you got to scroll back the hands of time to a very different world than when we live in now. It was very over the top, supermodel sexy. Yeah. And that was intimidating for young girls, in college. And you're probably thinking, as you're hearing me talk, why is this guy working in beauty and core intimates? What the hell does he know?
I have the question. It's coming up, but if you want to get into it now.
I'll answer it, which is, knowing what you don't know is the first step into knowing what you need to know. And because I wasn't wearing makeup and I didn't wear bras and underwear, it put me in an active listening mode. And so I wasn't biased by my own personal beliefs. Yeah. I was able to really listen to the consumer, understand what they wanted, really get into what they needed, and then bring that back from a strategic perspective into what we were doing. So an incredible, valuable lesson that I talk about in the book is listening to lead. And in order to listen, you got to know what questions to ask. So not being somebody who wore the product, understood the product, I had to really appreciate the mindset of the consumer. And that kind of started me on my path to this notion that I talk about in the book of thinking human, which the premise is really about imagining every customer who comes to your website or comes to your store. Imagine if they were your only customer. What would you do? Yeah. How would you treat them? How would you talk to them?
Or if they literally walked in your room, if it's an office or if it's a store. Now you're one-on-one, so you're getting human with that person.
Yep. So took Pink, scaled that business up to over $500 million.
Can I ask you about Pink real quick? I just think this is interesting. It's a huge brand. It's a huge line of Victoria's Secret. Was that met originally with a lot of like raised eyebrows from the company, or were they like, yeah, let's give something new a chance? And it was like, they were behind it because it's a huge thing now, but not everything that's big today started off and was an instant success. So did that really hit and broke through immediately, or did it take some time?
Because the company at the time was really led by a very strong CEO and founder, the cultural permission was there because he wanted it. The challenge became with him was that every decision he needed to make and didn't really have an understanding of the implications or an appreciation for when he maybe didn't know.
He wasn't thinking human.
He wasn't thinking human.
Yeah.
He wasn't thinking human. I mean, that business in particular needed to really appreciate the stage of life that consumer audience was in. I'm the father of a 17-year-old daughter now, and I can tell you the transformation in her is tremendous and still happening. And you have to appreciate not just the physical transformation, but the mental transformation that audience is going through. And then you needed to figure out how you could tap into it in a way that wasn't exploitive, but reflective. And that was a tough balancing act for a company that had a flagship brand that was all about over-the-top supermodel sexy.
Mm-hmm. That's a great transition. I mean, it's whether it's a story about a lingerie company or any company. I mean, to be able to realize, look, there's part of the market that we don't have yet, and it's a part of the market that's going to be our target market soon, right? Once they get into that age group or that supermodel sexy, is the brand that's kind of appealing to them. But they're in the transitional couple of years there. But not only that, like, everybody loves pink. I mean, you could be 60 years old and you wear a pink hoodie, or you could be 25-year-old.
And that wasn't a good thing. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
It was a good thing from a profitability perspective. It was not a good thing from a positioning perspective.
I got you. Because from the guy's perspective, just my complete outsider's experience with it, with girlfriends or with my ex-wife or whatever, is like, I feel like it's, different moment for different attire, right? Like, if you're wearing sexy lingerie, that's a different moment. If you're wearing pajamas, that's a different moment. So like the same person has different outfits for different occasions, if you will, or different times of day, right? So they didn't think of it that way. They thought, no, this target market's going to only buy this part of our line. Is that kind of...
What I will say is, put yourself in the mindset of a 19-year-old and you're on college campus and you're wearing the sweatpants with the logo on the butt.
Yeah.
And then you come home for break and you go to your younger brother's or younger sister's soccer game and you see a soccer mom wearing the same sweatpants that you wear in college. All of a sudden the brand isn't yours anymore.
Point made. Totally understand. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Great. You answer my question right there. So yeah, it's the perception of it gets muddied. Yeah.
It becomes difficult to make the brand. Look, you never are going to be able to fully isolate a brand with an audience, especially if the product is really cute. But when you're trying to build a brand, you have to stay authentic to that audience. One of the biggest mistakes that we made as we were rolling Pink out, and we fought this battle and we lost. And again, I don't want to spend this time going through a diatribe on the pitfalls of limited brands, but they're pretty well established.
Yeah.
Was that the average size of an American girl was a size 8'10", and our sizing didn't reflect that body type. And that's something we pushed for and just couldn't get through.
It was very specific to, like, you got to basically have a supermodel body to wear this product.
There was not enough forgiveness
and
appreciation for the physical awkwardness that even though you would probably go on Insta and TikTok today and be like, every 19-year-old girl is beautiful and perfect, if that's where you're spending your time. The reality is that we wanted scale, and scale required us to be more forgiving. And if we had to do it all over again, that's a battle I would have fallen on a sword for.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like over time, it's gotten to that point, though. It just was slower moving.
Look, society has changed. Leadership over there has changed. And at the end of the day, profitability won out. I think they realized that, and again, I haven't been involved in the business for decades, but I think they realized that they were shortchanging themselves.
Money talks, and in that case, the market was talking, saying, we want this, and it's different than what you're used to, and you got to start thinking human. And so thankfully it worked itself out, but not for the right reasons initially. And hey, that's big business. Hey, I want to go back a little bit and talk about the differences in branding and marketing, because I used to explained this to clients a lot years ago, and when setting up their different campaigns and social media and stuff like that. And so I want to hear from someone with a lot of more experience than I have. What's different about branding compared to marketing?
Sure. So marketing is really about motivating. Well, before I even give you the answer, let me just start with this. You can ask the question of what is marketing, and you can get 15 minutes. You could get 6 pages. At its core, marketing is motivating the consumer to do what you need or want them to do when you need or want them to do it.
Right.
Like
a call to action on a Instagram ad, for example. That's a marketing campaign.
Whether it's visit a website, go to a store, call a number. The purpose of marketing at its core, strip out all the bullshit you read in textbooks. It comes down to marketing is the ability to motivate the consumer to do what you want or need them to do when you want or need them to do it. Full stop. Branding is finding that emotional connection between what you are as a brand. A brand is a set of emotions, attributes, feelings, and perceptions, and a target. You can be great at branding and terrible at marketing. You can be great at marketing and terrible at branding. The worse you are at one, the stronger you need to be at the other.
Mm-hmm.
But they should work hand in hand, because branding comes down to positioning, which is really about the art of sacrifice. What are you going to stand for?
Yeah. Can you give some examples of what a brand can do to be really strong in branding? I think most people understand marketing. We could talk about marketing, but I think what's really interesting is the brand side of it.
Yeah.
So like, what separates just an average brand compared to a great brand? You can use a company that we all know if you want, but if you can just give a couple pointers.
So I think what separates good from great is the appreciation that consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. And this is something I talk about in the book a lot. A great brand connects with the consumer emotionally. That doesn't mean that they don't have rational things that speak, but the rational things are really about the product. The brand is an emotional connection. And so brands that connect emotionally are the ones that deliver sustained success over and over again. In my career, I would say that the brand that I've worked on that is probably most well known for its emotional connection would be Pearl Vision, which was really about reestablishing that brand as a commitment to care business, not a brand that was winning based on buy one, get one free, which is what it was when I joined the company. And the challenge was how to really revitalize that brand through a genuine, authentic connection. In the market today, you can look at brands like the Ritz-Carlton. I think probably does it among the best I've seen, in terms of your connection is to the brand, but you love their product. The product is the hotel. The brand is a emotional connection that elicits a feeling that you know you're going to get at that product. Product being the resort or destination. So those are a couple that I think do a really good job.
Yeah. My personal experience is Apple. I mean, I've been using their products since really the original iPhone came out, but even before that with their computers. And I'm younger than yourself, but I'm also not, I'm not just coming out of college or anything.
Is that because I haven't shaven? I think that's because I got a little gray in my whiskers, man.
I'm 39 years old. Okay. I'm the age group that had the first iMacs in every library, starting in like middle school to high school. The things were clunky. They didn't work well. So my friend group didn't really think Mac was cool. Apple had a problem. Their computers they were all different colors and they tried to make them cool. But and here's the thing, the networking has a lot to do with it too. So like the way the library had it all set up, but the computers were not what you know of Apple is today. And what was interesting is my uncle, who's out in California, was working in the film industry in Hollywood. They were all editing and doing Pro Tools on Mac computers years before we even knew that they were a great computer. And so he was telling me that, and I knew like Apple's coming along, and my friends were like, these things are dinosaurs. So it was kind of cool to have like an early scoop on this is the way that the computer's going for media production and post production. It really has had the industry hold since then. But then the other thing I think about with like a brand is just how well all Apple products work together. And that's why they get you in their ecosystem. And it's really hard to get out of the ecosystem too.
So, not to yuck your yum, so to speak, I actually think Apple is not a great brand. I think they're great products.
Okay.
And the reason why I would say they're not a great brand is take your AirPods to the Apple store a week after your warranty expired.
Yeah.
You
Bad
could have
experience.
12 products. They don't care. They'll give you $50 towards a $400 product. They are incredibly rigid when it comes to the service. And there is no loyalty program or stack and rack that allows you as a member of the Apple family to feel any benefits.
Yeah, I agree. Like, have there been a lot of things that I haven't had a great experience with? Maybe not a lot, but there's definitely a few times I've gone into an Apple store and didn't have a good experience. I guess what I'm talking about more is the way it feels when I got my Apple Watch the first day I put it on, how it instantly had everything from my phone and my computer on it. And very, knock on my wood desk, very rarely has any of my MacBook Pros when I'm editing a project or working on business. They're very consistently, perform at a high level. And my iPhones very rarely have ever had an issue. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I just use them as an example of a company a lot of people listening have an experience with.
Great products. Great products.
What I'd love you to do is, we have a little bit of a limited time here, and I got so much I want to talk about. Creating brand campaigns. You got into it a little bit a moment ago, but I'd love you to share, I want to be a fly in the wall. So you got an idea. So now you're in that idea stage, you're mapping it out, then you're pitching it. Can you walk us through the process of an ad campaign?
Building an ad campaign is really about the insight. What is the strategic insight that you're capitalizing on? And it could be an insight about your customer, could be an insight about your business, could be an insight about your category. So it starts with an insight. Then it comes down to developing a creative brief, because no great idea can go anywhere without being grounded in the first thing, which is it on brief? And a brief looks to connect the human truth, which is your audience, to your brand truth. And that Venn diagram, if you think about it, kind of the intersection, and again, I have a visual about this in the book, is really where the campaign strategic deliverable message, rests. Great brand campaigns say one thing. They do a great job of it, but they really focus on one thing. And so that intersection between the brand truth and the human truth is really where the genius lies. Then it just becomes about how do you take that idea, that insight, and turn it into an idea. And there is no art and there is no science to it. It's art and science. There is no specific process that anybody follows. You're meeting with your creative team. You're looking at what we used to call pencil sketches, which is really high level concepts, finding the ones that you feel connect with consumers emotionally and rationally. You start to develop boards. You decide what you're going to do. What I've typically done is I've gone ahead and, this is where the gut comes in. You go ahead and shoot it. And then you start putting the ads together from your shoot. And before you do anything in terms of releasing it, you're testing it. So you're getting that insight on the finished product. And that finished product is quote unquote finished because you're not doing final picture, final color, final sound, final mix. You're using your research to help refine your story narrative, your story arc. How are you really resonating with somebody emotionally and rationally? And then you put it into market.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for doing that. That really it brought it to life. It made me feel like I could be in one of those rooms and have an understanding of what's going on back there. But it made me also think of storyboarding a movie. It's the same idea, right? So write the screenplay, then a bunch of guys and gals get together, map it out in a storyboard, and then they have to kind of pitch it to a studio, and the studio wants to do it. Same idea there. So what do the focus groups look like? Is it different today than it was 20 years ago? Or
yeah, everything's virtual. Everybody, there are still focus group facilities, but sitting in the room with the two-way mirror, eating 2 pounds of M&Ms while you're watching group after group. It's fun, but it's inefficient. It's inefficient. You can do everything virtual, and there what you're doing is you're showing them stimulus, and you're waiting to get, you're looking at how we do something called face trace testing, where you're actually looking and you're registering the expressions. Mm-hmm. And that gives you more insight than what they're just controlling on a knob or what they're saying. Yeah. So you're looking for when that emotional dynamism really kicks in. Where is your recall the strongest in terms of where the brand, presents itself? And then how's your story arc?
I think
are you
that's
taking
awesome.
people on a journey?
Because a lot of times emotion could be different than what they put in on a, if they're taking just a Google form or filling something out online.
Yep.
They may click something because they're just going through and they're thinking fast. But how did they react when that product was in their hands? When they
Correct.
Unboxed it? What did their eyes open a little bit bigger when just the presentation of it came along? So that's really cool. Can you give us maybe one golden rule, just something that, every successful campaign that you've done had this element, something that's just must have?
Must have? It's a great question.
Like a backbone of a...
The backbone is, to put it bluntly, you want to develop something that makes somebody feel shit. You really want somebody to come away with an emotional takeaway. It could be joy, it could be laughter, it could be sorrow, it could be empathy. But the intensity of that emotion is so incredibly important. Every ad that I have done that has worked really well had a high degree of emotional intensity. Mm-hmm.
I'd love you to share some. Like, I want you to email me some of your favorite campaigns that you've worked on, or right now, if you can just tell us about one.
You can go on they're on my YouTube page. Okay. So if you look at Doug Zarkin, you'll find a bunch of them. I think the Small Moments campaign from Pearl Vision, which won a Clio, which is the equivalent of the Oscars of advertising. It won 5 North American Effies. The Small Moments campaign was notable because it really resonated with people on a very different level. It got out of just the selling glasses and more about a commitment to care. And in the category, it was so incredibly different than anything that was available that it broke through. It really resonated.
That's awesome. I'd love to learn a little bit more too about, in 2025, how are you ensuring that consumer voice is being heard? So you mentioned online is like the quick and easy way. Is there a particular process to make sure that consumer voice is heard in branding?
Well, I think if you are a brand that has any sort of platform for reviews and ratings management, whether that's Facebook, Google reviews, which is the gold standard, Yelp, you don't really have a choice but to get feedback from consumers. And you just need, as a brand, to be aware of it and embrace it for what it is, which is very angular feedback. You're going to hear the best of the best and the worst of the worst. But you have to expressly take interest in that in order to really stay in touch with what's going on in your consumer landscape.
Mm-hmm. And it's something you're consistently doing. It's not like
you have to consistently
every time we do a new campaign, we reach out. It's okay. This thing's already in the market now.
Oh yeah. You're looking at reviews every week.
Constantly,
you're looking at reviews every day, every week. If somebody leaves you a good review, you say thank you. If somebody leaves you a bad review, you try to take the conversation offline to talk to them human to human, and then circle back publicly and say, I'm glad we've rectified your issue.
Now, are you working for a few brands right now? We mentioned a couple of them and a couple from your past. Or are you kind of hired as a consultant to come into?
No. I'm currently the chief brand officer of a health and wellness company.
Okay, cool.
Where we have 4 big sort of category brands underneath the umbrella. But I have, in the course of my career, led a number of different brands at different times.
Yeah. It's an impressive resume, man. And I did see on your website, there's 17 different awards that you have, and there's probably more than that you didn't even have on there yet. But yeah, the Clio, there's a couple others that I'm going to note in a second too. What I'd love you to do, if you can, is share the role of stakeholders when it comes to aligning with a brand's vision. Do they actually, get feedback at all? Is it simply just a results business? if they're happy if the brand's crushing it, or do they have a say in some of the what's going on with marketing?
What I would say to anybody who's watching the podcast or listening to the podcast is that you're always going to have stakeholders, whether the stakeholders have the authority or they have the implicit alignment. You're not doing anything in a vacuum. Your biggest stakeholder is obviously your consumer. And that's where you do your research and you dot your I's and cross your T's and you really try to find the insight that allows you to unlock that special something that makes a campaign truly resonate. But you're dealing with, whether it's your CEO, your CFO, your franchisees, depending on your organization, you're going to have a different layer of stakeholders. In my past lives, I've had stakeholders across the pond in Italy and in France, as well as, franchisees in a variety of markets in the US. Your biggest stakeholder, though, is your consumer.
Yeah, and that's what we just talked about. That has to be the pinnacle. That has to be the biggest focus. Hey, speaking of branding and marketing and all that good stuff, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, socialchameleon.us. Go to socialchameleon.us to transform your podcast if you want to turn it into great social media content. If you want to make sure the audio and video looks and sounds great and create a YouTube channel, launch it from step one. Social Chameleon is there to do it all for you. Socialchameleon.us, transform your podcast. And then also, we're recording this on riverside.fm. So shout out to Riverside for the great video quality that we get through them. And Libsyn.com is how we do the audio distribution. Libsyn.com and riverside.fm. All right, so back to the show. Give us a scoop on the future. Like, what does, obviously technology and AI is going crazy. What does that look like in the future for branding and marketing?
So I think technology, much like data, can be used for good or it can be used for evil, depending on how you wield it. AI will never, in my opinion, deliver fully automated marketing that works. And the reason is because it doesn't apply the human factor. It looks at variables and it puts together using an algorithm based on your inputs. And that's the most important part of AI, is it's based on your inputs. You're feeding the machine based on content that you put in, prompts, situations that you share, whether you're uploading a spreadsheet, you're uploading a PowerPoint deck, you're uploading a video. The algo that powers AI is going to use those inputs and come back to you with what it thinks. But part of what makes marketing and branding so challenging is that if marketing's goal is to motivate the consumer to do what you want or need them to do when you want them or need them to do it, the arrogance that takes also requires the humility to recognize that you are never going to fully understand your consumer. And no machine can fully understand your consumer. Think about how many emails you get if you let's say you buy you're married, you buy your partner a gift, and then that company keeps coming after you to sell you the product, but it's not a product that you would ever wear.
Right.
They don't know it's a gift.
Totally lost
you.
Yeah. So, now, the word that comes to mind for me is innovation. Like, AI works a lot, helps me a lot with word processing or social media content and stuff like that, as far as just speeding up the process. But the human element of innovation still you have to look at what they're giving you, and you got to still have creativity there. But I think like a great brand, like if you're really going to come out with something that's going to make people feel, and you're going to do it the right way, I don't see that idea, at least today, coming from AI. It might help you with processes, but that really creative, innovative way to make people feel during watching your ad, I don't see it coming from there right now.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, the first two letters of innovation stand for insight. And that insight is really developed by humans. It's not developed by machine.
Yeah.
You can use machines to help you uncover it. But the reality is someone's got to put a stake in the ground that this is an insight that you believe can take you to another place, a place that's better, a place that's more effective.
Yeah. So I think AI has a great place in it all, but it's not the idea.
Correct.
At least right now for the inception of the idea. So we got a lot of people tuning in that are aspiring entrepreneurs, they're already entrepreneurs. They're looking to level up. We got marketers tuning in to hear your story, people interested in branding. What advice would you give them if they're just kind of getting started and they really want to make sure they're making the right pivotal moves in their career? Any recommendations or things you would say, if I could go back and make these 2 or 3 changes, I would do that?
I think the first thing is to recognize there is no right way and there is no wrong way. There's just a way. Mm-hmm. So stop stressing about the right way. Just pick a direction and go for it. The second thing I think I would say is more isn't better, better is better. And that applies to not only what you're doing if you're in a position to drive marketing for a brand, but it also, as an entrepreneur, when you're thinking about what success looks like, do 1 or 2 things really, really well, and then build on that. And then the third thing I would say is, and this one is, I'll say it and I'll explain it, is sell more chicken. And by that, I mean the following, which is if you're a company that is winning the QSR battle by selling chicken, the answer to how to drive sales isn't all of a sudden to sell pizza. It is to sell more chicken, sell deviations of what makes you successful. You've got to be humble and recognize that somebody who's going to your restaurant for chicken probably isn't going to go to your restaurant for pizza. So when you think about extensions, category extensions, line extensions, think about where you've already earned the credit for and where you can continue to build from.
Yeah, I think sometimes businesses start to open up more and more and more, and then eventually they lose the magic of what they originally were in the beginning, and they get almost too, what's the word? Not convoluted, but they're not focusing on one thing and doing it great anymore. They're just diverse, too overly diversified is kind of what I'm thinking of. That's great advice, man. That's awesome. So talking about your 17 impressive awards again in your brag book, and you're not the one bragging, I'm doing it for you. I found it. It's Marketer of the Next Generation. That's huge, man. And that's by Brand Week. So that's just one example. It's incredible. When you're looking back at your career so far, we obviously kind of went through memory lane for you right now, the last half hour or so. What jumps out as like a favorite moment? Something that was like, wow, you know what? That's pretty cool that I was a part of that.
I think winning Women's Wear Daily's best executed launch strategy for the Mark brand from Avon, which I was the founding director of marketing and creative services for. And the reason is because nobody thought we could do it. Nobody thought we could take a 100-year-old brand and build an entire new business unit that was going to reinvent a model that was proven for a consumer base that everyone thought was completely off limits. It was a lot of no, you can'ts. And, I give all the credit in the world to the runway that we were afforded by our CEO at the time, Andrea Jung, who is just an industry icon. She believed in it. She believed in it personally. And she paved the way for us to innovate with the freedom to really think differently. One of the pieces of innovation that I brought to that business was they used to do all of their training live. And the young women audience in college had a very flexible, inflexible schedule, meaning that we needed to really be where they were, not requiring them to be where we were. So we partnered with the University of Phoenix and we developed an online training course that allowed young women to understand how to be a Mark representative and earn college credit at the same time, which is pretty darn cool. And that was something that I played a major role in, and really proud of it.
That's awesome. And one key component of that is you're working with someone on a leadership team with an innovation mindset, where you mentioned another company earlier that was kind of living in the past still. And so that is a great lesson too, is if you want to move forward, you got to be thinking forward too. And I like what you said about thinking human. My big takeaway for today, just so you know, is to remember to get back to, you want to sell 1 million products or more, or whatever your number is, but think about selling it to one person first and having that connection.
Yeah. It's a philosophy that I guess you could culminate in, again, something I talk about in the book, this notion of thinking small to win big. How do you take a small idea, a small moment, and really explode on it?
You mentioned the book a few times. I'm going back through my notes. I want people to know, where can they get it? Is it on your website? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, so
everywhere?
Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone is available at Amazon. You can get it in paperback or Kindle.
Okay.
And if you want to learn more about the book, you can go to my website, dougzarkin.com, and learn a little bit more about me. I think you can still download a free chapter of the book, which will give you kind of a bit of a taste as to
sneak peek,
of what you can expect. And again, it's not a how-to, because as I said, there is no right way or wrong way. It's a guide, and a guide requires you as a member of that journey to have a voice in where you go and how you go.
Right. I think it's, I mean, I didn't read the book yet, so admittingly, I'm going to get your book. But the title caught my attention, and I kind of read a little bit of the bullet points on what the book's about. I think it's an incredible, like,
Thank you.
just taking everything and putting it, everything we talked about really today is like bullet points and what the book covers. But I'd love to hear what creative elements went into the title.
Branding and marketing is all about the relationship business, and brands that think they have a deeper connection with consumers find out when they go in for that intimate first kiss. And usually, if you are in the friend zone, that's when you miss forecast pretty damn big, because you think your consumer is more loyal to you than you are. And that's, not like in your personal relationships where you think you may have a deeper connection with somebody and you go in for that step forward and they realize, no, I just like you as a friend. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not a great thing either.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like when I first read it, I'm like, oh, that's a catchy title and kind of gets you thinking, but there's more, it's deeper than that. Like you just said, it's really about getting someone to fall in love with you for the long haul, not just be someone who's around you or maybe likes you a little bit. You want to fall in love. You want the long-term relationship with the consumer.
Correct.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Hey, I know you got to run. This is a great conversation. And
thank you.
I love when I have a new conversation, because I've been doing the podcast for like 5 years, 240 plus episodes. And sometimes you get a lot of similar minds, great people, but sometimes the stories, just like in movies, you start to see the same story over and over. Today, this was fresh. This is the first time for me having this conversation about a lot of the different brands that you're involved with. I learned from you. I think our audience is going to love this episode. I know they will. And I just want to remind everybody, if you did like it, let us know. Like it on YouTube, obviously. Share it with your connections and your friends that you believe would like it. And you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show. Is there any last words that you want to get up before you jump?
What I would say is, for any entrepreneur or any young marketer, there's a superhero inside every one of you guys. You just got to have the courage to put on the cape and fly.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, man. I love to end every episode with be great and be grateful. And cheers to you, my man. Doug Zarkin, you're the real deal. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Keep on moving on.